Welcome all to this Armadale Regional Council meeting of the 23rd of February 2022. Could we please be upstanding for the Civic Affirmation and Acknowledgement of Country?
We, the councillors of the Armadale, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of the councillor in the best interests of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skill and judgment.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armadale Regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture.
Thank you. General Manager to make a statement in relation to live streaming of the council meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This meeting's, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting's being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. And just a reminder, please, to set your mobile phones, either turn them off or set them to silent. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We now move to apologies and applications for leave of absence. I have not received any apologies or requests for leaves of absence, and note that all councillors are present. Next, councillors, I ask for disclosure of any interests. Having reviewed the agenda, do any of you have any to declare any conflict of interest? Thank you. Councillor McMichael.
Note that in the going to the community, I'm a member of the Armadale Neighbourhood Centre for one of the community announcements, one of the agenda items. Yep.
Terrific, thank you. We will note that. All right, we'll now move to item 5.1, the confirmation of minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on 27 January 2022. Can I call for a mover of that, please? Thank you, Councillor Galletley, and a seconder, Councillor Gadders. Shall we put this to a vote? Okay, all passed. That's to the tune of 11. I haven't received any notices of motion, so we will move to item 8.1. At item 8.1, councillors are...
Could I move a procedural motion, please?
Certainly.
Would we be able to move item 9.1 forward for the interest of those in the gallery? I propose that, we do that, if I get a seconder.
I have a seconder from Councillor Robinson. Granted. Let's jump to item 9.1. So item 9.1, this item is timely and topical in light of the public forum held just now, and as Councillor O'Brien rightly pointed out, many of the members of the gallery are here. So at this item, council is being asked to note the community engagement report. It's been asked to note the key concerns raised during the engagement sessions and provide due consideration to landholder concerns during the construction phase of the New England Rail Trail. Can I call...
Could I move an amendment, please?
There is only up there is a recommendation, so if you would like to...
add one, if I could?
You may.
Okay. I'd like to move... It is very much related to the consultation aspect, which we will... I'll discuss in a moment. But number D, if I could add, give due consideration to other uses of the line should opportunities other than the rail trail arise.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
Should other opportunities to the rail trail, arise. Thank you.
So Councillor O'Brien has moved that, so we can discuss that new motion. You second the procedural motion, so we now have an amendment, or we have a motion on foot. Do we have a seconder for this in order to discuss Otherwise, it'll be declared lost and we'll go back. We need a seconder for a motion. Councillor O'Connor, thank you.
I don't know if the mover will agree to this, but the motion that I'd like to second is slightly different. Give due consideration to other uses of the line. Give due consideration to other uses of the corridor. That's all.
That has been, we now, let's say we have a new
Yeah.
motion on foot. Okay.
Just just delete the reference to should other opportunities arise.
Okay, thank you. Council, so we have a mover and a seconder for what's up there. Councillors, any discussion on this? Councillor Witters.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Deborah?
Are we just discussing the amendment or discussing the motion? Because which one are we discussing first?
We should be discussing the amendment.
Yeah, sweet. Does the mover of the amendment get a chance to speak to the amendment before I jump in and speak against it?
Yes. I go first.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. The reason I'm adding that is that I guess it is a comment on the community engagement process that resulted in this. I'd just like to say that the rail trail proposal actually should be a community study or a case study in how community consultation can fail communities. This is not the fault, I have to emphasise, of the honest, hard-working staff, and no one works harder than the Armadale Regional Council staff in carrying out their work, and basically they are just doing the bidding of the governing body. So I suppose that they do get better support in terms of how they might carry that duty out. It's systemic. It's not council. It's systemic. Decisions are made from top to bottom, not only in regional councils generally, but in governments, that are based on information that have not been factually verified, nor systematically measured. Claims are made until facts become, fake news becomes facts, and no one knows where it comes from anymore. It becomes a circular information system. So the councillors are told there's no hope for rail, so rail trails are better than nothing. They rely on regional plans that rely on community feedback from a community relying on regional plans. Politicians make decisions based on pressure from community that has been informed by communities that have been informed by regional plans, and nobody knows what the facts are. And no one knows where their information comes from in the end, or where the truth is. I saw the beginning of this whole thing, an emotion that requested about a couple of weeks into my first when I first became a councillor, a motion that requested equal community consultation was voted down by the casting vote of the mayor, so that 2 votes happened for this to be casted down. Otherwise, we'd be in an entirely different place now. So proper consultation was actually voted down. Council money was then spent on a report that was based on really a already decided agenda, based on that 2 votes for 1 agenda. The report on rail trails that were commissioned has been pulled apart by genuinely qualified people whose voices are never tabled in this debate. All this happens when a few strong people with an agenda push through, and good people doing their job come to work, and before you know it, the voices of trains are now characterised as the opposition, the naysayers. And it's no fault of anyone but a bigger system in which faux democracy ends up happening. Their voices are then seen as hijacking meetings. They have considered to have lost the debate, so the consultation process isn't real anymore. It's now become impossible. It's a mistake. The numbers are no longer counted. Naysayers are mollified by, feedback that already supports the agenda. No one changes their mind. The die is cast. Business who really actually want to do business on the rail, who have genuine business cases, are told it's too late. It's now a rail trail. So I don't know when the consultation, when it shifted other possibilities off. And this is why I ask, why are we not giving consideration still to other possibilities? Now, the Mayor has set up a new agenda of growth in the region, which I wholly support. But how can we grow without talking about how we rebuild our transport? When the Mayor was campaigning, he characterised train supporters, and I mean, I'm not taking it against him because I said things to train supporting councillors as negative and as naysayers. But what will happen if a company was to build a factory, on the line and wants the line rebuilt? Who will be saying no? I'll be saying yes. And I'll be saying yes to, because I believe that I have an ambitious and optimistic view of our region. And the day we pull up the tracks, in my view, is the day we stop believing in ourselves and stop believing in this bigger, brighter, bigger future. So that's why I'm saying, please still give consideration if other great ideas come along. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Any other councillors? Councillor Witters. Councillor O'Brien, you'll need to switch your mic on.
Not going to disagree with anything Councillor O'Brien said in regards to this proposal. My views on the proposal over the last 4 to 5 years can easily be seen on YouTube. My concern is, again, this view can be seen, is when are we going to stop going on the merry-go-round? When is something either way going to have to be done? And I thought about this the other night. Those of us that were against this proposal are in a win-win situation. If the rail trail is built and it brings in the money and the tourist and everything that's been proposed, there's a win. There's growth in the community. If it doesn't, we get to walk around with a smug look on our face and say, I told you so. It wasn't going to work. So let's give them the chance. The decision's been made. We've had that many bloody rescission motions over the last 4 or 5 years. I note that Glen Innes have already started, as I mentioned in my question earlier, Glen Innes have already started theirs. So any chance of a rail line between here and Mullingarra has to go through Glen Innes. So then we've got to rely on Glen Innes to change their policies. We've then got to work with those councillors as well. Money has been given already to start the program and develop all this sort of stuff. Back to Councillor O'Brien's comment, if something else comes along, if there is a big business, I note, I just spoke to the Mayor about this earlier, about the new sealed road that goes from North Queensland all the way across to Western Australia, and our federal member talking about infrastructure and bringing people out of the cities into more of Australia, so that more of Australia is occupied. If that is needed in this area, I do believe that the rail trail will be cut straight back up, and the rail line will be put back in at the drop of a hat. So let's move on. The decision's been made. As I said, I've always been against it, but you take your wins and you take your losses. So let's move on. Let them do whatever they need to do, and then if we need to change it, then I'm sure either the states or feds will take it back over when necessary. So the reason why I'm against this amendment, because we're only speaking about the amendment, is given due consideration to other uses of the corridor. I don't think that's up to the council. I think that it will be up to the feds or the states to, if there's another use for the corridor, which is to bring trains back, then they can make that decision, not us.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Councillor O'Connor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to address my comments to the amendment. I do have something prepared in relation to the full motion, so it's a little difficult to select what I'm going to say, but I think it's very clear that what's happened here is that the cart, in fact, has been put before the horse. Now, the proper procedure that should have happened a long time ago, oh, am I too close? Sorry, is that there should have been really robust community consultation in the first stages, and in that event, I note that back in 2018, a motion was passed. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. A motion was passed that in fact that happened. Now,
Councillor Gillespie, Councillor O'Connor has the floor.
Thank you. It's not irrelevant for the fact that we're really now diving into the question of whether we accept this so-called engagement report or not.
Councillor Gillespie, please.
Yeah, we're talking about the fact that at no stage have alternatives to a rail trail been considered by this council in its previous iterations. And I think that's a major, major flaw as we go forward. The report that is sought to be tendered by the staff is, patently defective in many, many ways, and I plan to go through that if I have to when I speak to the substantive motion. If this amendment fails,
well, let's speak to the substantive motion if we need to. We'll just
but at the moment, what I want to say is that there was a requirement stipulated in motion 3/18 of 2018 that in relation to the proposal back then in 2018 that council engage with the state government following community consultation conducted by the Office of Premier and Cabinet as to its current position on the New England Rail Trail, and that there be conducted a comprehensive investigation and discovery of all relevant information and conduct, and there be the conduct of extensive community consultation once those investigations have been completed as per the then economic development strategy. Look, I don't think that ever happened, and I'm happy to stand corrected, but there has been no comprehensive community consultation, and I recall the same as Councillor O'Brien does, a vote casting a vote by the Mayor to actually deny comprehensive community consultation. That's why I think that we've actually taken a really big wrong turn in this. There are a lot of ways that you can activate a rail corridor, and the turn that we should have taken, and is still open to us, is to do something similar to what the Byron Bay Council did when they engaged Arcadis Australia Pacific to undertake a feasibility study on the multiple use and activation of their rail corridor between, they had a small area, I think, between Bangalow and Yelgan. But there was a very detailed brief to Arcadis, and it was to include engineering assessments, economic impact assessment and social impact assessment. That's just not been done here, and the question of multi-use is not going to go away. It's going to fester and become, a big sore as other things have that unfortunately are a legacy, like, the fiasco over the changes to the mall back in 2018, same year. So my view, that final report is available now to the public. It was delivered to the Byron Bay Council back in 2019. So look, I support this amendment for the reason that I think we have made a false turn. People come to me all the time telling me how feeble or confusing the so-called engagement that's referred to in the substantive report referred to in this item was. And I've got one example, which was that there was just one phone call to Ben Lomond, as it was, just saying, did they support some use of the railway? And of course the Ben Lomond people said, well, yes. And that, they say, was turned into support for the rail tower proposal. Now, look, this is pretty dodgy, and I don't want this to come out. So I think the cleanest way to deal with this is to admit that there have been, we're legatees of some mistakes in the past.
Councillor O'Connor, that's 5 minutes. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think we need to just face the music and look at alternative uses before we accept the money from the federal government.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Any other councillors to speak in regards to the amendment? Councillor Gaddis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it simple. I believe the motion in front of us here is around the engagement on this particular topic. I believe that we've shown in the last minute in the Have You Say segment that we've also quite open to taking future engagement from the community. In fact, we had a 3-to-1 in terms of against versus for. And I'd like to consider one of the speakers that actually mentioned, let's work together on this. Let's continue to take the level of engagement that we possibly can. As with any project of this size, we need to understand and scope the project correctly and then move forward. So I think work together and continue the engagement is the right attitude.
Thank you, Councillor Gathers. Councillor Packham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been interesting coming on to council and having the legacy of a council before me that discussed this ad infinitum. Council has endorsed and embarked on a trajectory that has not been interjected by the state or the federal governments. In fact, in lots of ways, they've supported the move to the option of a rail trail. And while I would welcome a more rounded assessment of the pros and cons, we are going down the path of assessing the rail trail. I also like to foreshadow, therefore, that I'd like to assure ratepayers that the rail trail initiative be cost neutral to ratepayers, and I would like to foreshadow that amendment in lieu of item D.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. So if there are no other comments, we will vote on the item D that's up there. Due consideration be given to other uses of the corridor. So all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? That's so the motion, the amendment has been lost. And that was 6-5. We'll just wait for the paperwork to catch up. So, councillors, we're now back to the original motion. Well, the original recommendation. Do I have a mover?
I thought Councillor O'Brien moved it and then moved an amendment to it, so isn't she still the original mover of the original motion?
Just moved an amendment, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Gallatley is moving the recommendation that is on the screen. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Redwood. Are there any comments that any councillors wish to make around the motion?
Yes, there is. Councillor Gallatley has a move.
Thank you. I think the A, B and C cover it pretty well. This is, it's just the right thing to do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Packham.
Mr. Mayor, I had foreshadowed an amendment for my own Part D.
You are correct, you did. We will hear your amendment.
Part D, the council assessment assure ratepayers that the rail trail initiative be cost neutral to ratepayers before proceeding.
Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Okay, so we have it's Councillor Packham's amendment. Would you like to speak to that at all?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think I have spoken about this before. I congratulate everybody who's made assessments into the rail trail in the past, the pros, the cons, etc. But our core business in council is to raise revenue through ratepayers, and every initiative that we support, especially of this size of capital nature, needs to be assured by the fact that we will generate ratepayers in support of these ongoing capital initiatives and, of course, the ongoing costs associated with maintaining that. My position is that all benefits derived should involve generation of additional ratepayers to share the burden, and which we could therefore say that the cost of maintenance going forward is therefore cost neutral and hence a benefit to council and the region.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. Before I call on anyone else, can councillors please ensure they're speaking in close but not too close? Councillor O'Connor, you would like to speak to this amendment?
As the seconder, I think I'll speak as a seconder in support of it. Whilst it's not a perfect, sorry, is this okay? Can you hear me? Thank you. I support Councillor Packham saying, I mean, there's so many questions that are unanswered. I just think this project is so not shovel ready. It's scary. One of the questions is just a few examples, I guess, to flesh out Councillor Packham's concerns, or mine at least, and that's there's been no information what this will do in terms of depreciation. There's been no indication of how this, what the real costs are. I don't think that there's been any actual financial reporting on what the actual cost of maintenance, who will own the rail trail infrastructure, how are these volunteers that are suggested are going to kind of offset the costs to the ratepayers? I mean, where are they? Are they real, or are they just a figment of, wishful thinking in relation to this project? It's just so flimsy at the moment that I'm delighted that Councillor Packham has put this amendment up.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Robinson.
I just would like, through you, to ask the General Manager as to what maybe we might have to amend it to what we mean by cost neutral. Because, for example, in the definition of cost neutral, should we be taking into account additional tourism, additional uses of cafes, or additional bed lights, or perhaps we could have a quick definition of cost neutral, because it surely is not just determined by the increased rateable revenue, because none of the other projects like the swimming pool or other things would work on that grounds.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Mr. General Manager, are you?
Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest perhaps Councillor Packham, as the mover of the motion, might like to explain what he meant by cost neutral. I've certainly got my view, but it doesn't really matter.
If I may, I'd throw to Councillor Packham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. General Manager. It's not for me to impose costs on council willy-nilly. No, it's a very tangible metric. It is that someone does the study that demonstrates that having X amount of extra tourists in our region will generate jobs in line with the mayor's and our group's aspirations for more population and more jobs, and that if we can somehow link the increase and the metric of having more tourists into our region will generate, and I'll just loosely say this, an extra cleaner at the hotel, an extra breakfast cook, someone else who can create a bed stay, which is not just a secondary job, but may entice somebody to actually come and live in this region and to become a ratepayer, and therefore contribute to the overall burden, which is direct. As a direct consequence of having more tourists in the region, it has generated more people who want to come and live here and contribute to our rate burden. And it is not a fluffy and nice to have, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Packham.
My
Witters.
question, I think, is to the GM in regards to some statements. I really agree with Councillor Packham's thoughts on making it cost neutral, and just listening to him there reminds me of some comments I made about secondary jobs and how the rail trail would bring in secondary jobs and everything else a few years back. So that's good to see that we're on the same trail for that. Pun intended. My question, my thing is, as a council, can we make it cost? You might have to take this on notice. Is there a scope to make it cost neutral to begin with? So, is there capabilities to do that? And the second one is just some clarifications around Councillor O'Connor's comment about things that haven't been done or have been done in regards to the whole proposal that you mentioned. If you could, and you might have taken that on notice as well, but they're my questions through you to Mr. Mayor, to the GM.
Mr. GM, if you're able to respond to Councillor Witters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can't comment to Councillor O'Connor's comments. Obviously 3 or 4 years ago, I don't have that that information or data to hand. But I think Councillor Packham's talked about cost neutral and certainly what that metric looks like to him. From my perspective, probably even simpler. It would just mean that we're not increasing rates, for instance, in order to be able to pay a levy towards maintaining that. So we're doing it within our means, and that, right or wrong, the community aren't missing out on other services that would otherwise be provided, by virtue of having to maintain the rail trail. So I think that plus the metrics that Councillor Packham's talking about really goes to certainly what I would understand to be cost neutral definition.
Could I please ask a question of through the chair of Councillor Packham?
You may.
Okay. I understand that partially of what he said, that the benefits and the profit gain through having the extra people, but is the other half that the cost would be taken from that? Is that what he means? That the cost of a rail trail, whatever that would be taken from the benefits? I mean, no? No?
Councillor Packham, is this something that you need more information, or can I?
Or it just doesn't make sense?
Mr. Mayor, if you can't understand the question, I have. To be fair, Deb, I'm saying that we should be able to look at, and it would be the same if the proposal for rail was to remain. And don't get me wrong on this point. If the rail was to bring X amount of tourists, and I don't have seen the study for it, but if it was that same process, is that a rail is a state government cost in the main. The rail trail is a council-related cost in the main, and our revenues are based on ratepayers. And whilst I can't look to the delegation of the General Manager, who has to work within his operational means and his operational budget, I'm talking more about, just at a high-level metric, that it will generate in its own right X amount of additional ratepayers into our region, which over and above would offset the cost that has been highlighted in the report for us at 154,000 shared between two councils. I have raised concerns in our private workshop that number is dated, and I would therefore expect the General Manager to come back to me with more relevance of information and more currency of information. And I hope that answers the question.
It was the offsetting of the costs, I think, that you didn't actually say, but thank you very much through the chair to Councillor Packham.
Thank you all. Councillor Redwood.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Packham. Your proposed amendment, could you consider changing cost neutral to at no additional burden to ratepayers or something of that nature?
Councillor Redwood, thank you for the question. Would I consider it? That was more a consideration for the General Manager's definition and not mine.
Okay, so at the moment the amendment stands. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could add cost neutral to ratepayers and the region, just to clarify that additional tourist dollars might be a benefit to the region, and that should be included in the benefits. The mover will accept it.
Councillor Packham, I suspect that was a question to you. Would you consider an amendment along those lines, or would you prefer to keep it tight?
Mr. Mayor, I prefer to keep it tight. The definition of region is broad, especially when after Councillor Witters had mentioned Glen and Severn Council, which belongs to our broader region and our JOC. Thanks.
Thank you.
As a seconder, I would not accept that amendment either.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, councillors. Councillor McMichael, would you?
I just like to say, particularly when we're considering our budget over the next couple of months, and we're looking at what services we're targeting and that sort of thing, and people are looking at a possible amount of 154,000 shared between two councils, and looking at $76,000, and people are going, well, I can't have my $500. You know, why? What's a project and what's going to be a business case and all that kind of stuff. It's really important to target it to ratepayers who are looking at rate pegs and money going up, and why am I paying extra money for my rates, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Councillor McMichael. If there are no further questions, let's move to a vote on the amendment, which is the one that's on the screen, that council ensure the project is cost neutral to ratepayers. All those for? That's unanimous. Thank you. So we now come back to the, well, now amended motion with items A, B, C and D. Would anyone who... Councillor Galletley moved it. Councillor Galletley, would you like to speak to what is now your motion?
I agree. This is a good little item to be putting on with D, and I thank Councillor Packham for doing so. And I think we should just get in and vote it through and move along like we should be doing with the whole of this rail trail business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galletley. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't want to extend the debate too much longer. I'm happy with the amendment, but not fully satisfied with the nature of this report. And I just want to identify very quickly, on behalf of people that have raised this with me in the community, that they're very unsatisfied. Many people in the community are very unsatisfied with this report and with the nature of the consultation. Number one, I think, is that it would only be fair that the item that's claimed to be an ARC event of consultation being an event that was not run by ARC but was run by Visions for New England Institute, that constituted a very controlled meeting with somebody who's clearly has a commercial conflict of interest. That should be struck out of this report, and I ask that it be done so, as it clearly is not an appropriate inclusion for an ARC, item of engagement. Anyway, that's my request, and I hope that it will be done. Secondly, I think this has been raised in a smaller way, but the fact is there are absolutely no metrics in this report. And if you're talking about consultation, you must have metrics. You must say how many people attended a meeting, how many were for, how many were against. This report is absolutely devoid of that, and it's as evidence of anything but a very imperfect process. That's a terrible flaw in it, in the consultation, I suppose, itself. But I guess the report speaks for the flimsiness of the process. I have to say this, even though I don't wish to really labour the point, but the report clearly contains bias. Some genuine attendees are referred to in page 100 of the attachments to this report as having hijacked the meeting. Now, I have personal knowledge of that incident, and I think those people attended with a genuine intention to actually say no to the proposal that was supposedly being consulted or engaged upon at the time, which was, and I think the report is infected by bias in relation to the reference to those people as hijackers of the meeting. The report is inaccurate in that it refers to council's enthusiasm for the project when the project was initially slated for a funding application. In fact, that decision was made by the interim administrator, Mr. Viv May, PSM, who I believe was completely out of his jurisdiction in greenlighting, if you like, a project of this magnitude and with these severe consequences for transport in our region. So there was no council enthusiasm at the time this decision was made. It was an undemocratic process made by an appointed interim administrator. I've mentioned the absence of metrics. And I believe, sadly, that the report is actually quite misleading in that it fails to note that the sessions were offered as an explanation information session. It wasn't genuine engagement. The landholders, I know, because I've had people have come to me and told me what happened at those meetings. The landholders were told that this was going ahead and, they would have to accept it. No alternatives were put to them. And to suggest that there was great enthusiasm for this project overall with absolutely no metrics included just totally undermines the quality of this report. I'm sorry to say, but I think the community is coming back with a flood of objections in relation to the quality of this report. Yes, we can note it, but I have to say that what we are noting is something that is so flimsy as to be pretty much worthless in terms of noting any actual engagement. And look, I note item 8.3 today defines what engagement is, and words are used like openness, transparency, trust and respect, and that community engagement strategy that we're going to pass soon is being created to broad and in relation to the engagement over the community strategic plan, but it's council's intention to broaden that scope to cover all of council's engagement activities when developing and delivering projects and initiatives. I do not think this report indicates any compliance with the IAP2 spectrum.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
Requirements.
Councillor O'Connor.
I'll just finish my sentence, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor O'Connor, can you do your mic?
Yep.
Councillor Witters.
Me. Thank you to the councillors already commented on this. I know we're still stuck on the first issue of the day, but a lot of the this is just about noting the community consultation, and I really would like to thank the writers of the report for putting in the frequently raised issues. I think that for those who have taken the time to jump online and read through this motion as it is, there's some questions that have been answered there. I note things like biosecurity and animal welfare, liabilities, legislation and ownership, construction, all these sorts of things. What was the last one? Cost, maintenance, trains returning, so rails, not trails. All these sorts of issues have been noted and a response has been given. So thank you for that. I suppose we need to be honest about how we got to this situation. Even though I was probably in the minority every time we voted on this issue, a majority has voted to move towards a rail trail. So that in turn means the council is supporting a rail trail. Whether you're against it or not, that's the decision that was made over numerous meetings and motions and everything else. I still... that'll do me. I'm over it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. If there are Councillor Packham.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I fully appreciate Councillor O'Connor's concerns. The report's not definitive, but I trust as councillors we can digest, decipher and come to a conclusion on the form and content and failings of such report and note the report.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. So if there are no other speakers, for the motion that is on the screen, that Council note the community engagement report, note the key concerns, provide due consideration for concerns raised by landholders, and that Council ensure the project is cost neutral to ratepayers. Can I see that all those in favour? That's 11 carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors, for what has been, I think, a well-deserved and rightly exhaustive discussion. I'd just like to take a minute, if any of the gallery who are probably staying around for that discussion, if you would like to leave, we'll just give you a minute to go, otherwise saddle in. That's what I like, an enthused gallery. So we will come back to the the normal course of the agenda and go to item 8.1. And this was for, so for those watching at home, this is from page 7 in the agenda. Council are to nominate 2 members and 2 alternatives for the Regional Planning Panel, which reviews developments where the capital investment value exceeds $30 million, or if the development is council related, the CIV exceeds $5 million. I would like to break this motion into, or I'd like to break this recommendation into 2 parts. The first one is a vote for the Mayor and the Deputy as the 2 representatives, and the second part would be to call for nominations for the alternate. So could I have a mover, Councillor Witters, and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McMichael. So, Councillor Witters, would you like to speak to the...
No, let's just do the vote for the Mayor and the Deputy to go. If everyone's happy with that, then we'll just go straight to nomination for some alternatives.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor O'Connor.
I just want to know whether anybody else does want to be nominated.
Yeah, I'll answer that one for you. I've spoken to, as the mover of the motion, I've spoken to a couple of people who I think would be good alternatives, and through the Mayor, if we're allowed to nominate people now.
No, let's.
Well, if not, we'll do it in a minute.
Let's get this one done, then we'll go to the next one. So, for the motion that's on the screen, that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor be nominated, all those in favour? Those against? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. So if we can go to part 2, we're going to call now for alternate. One's Councillor Witters.
Am I allowed to nominate my 2 now, or do I have to do them one at a time?
You can nominate them both now.
All right. Well, I'd like to nominate Councillors Packham and Mepham. If I haven't spoken to both of them, I think they're in agreement with that. So,
thank you, Councillor Witters. Any other nominations? Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I was the representative on the previous council, so I've some experience of this, and I'd be interested in nominating as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Well, it was your motion, so do you want to speak to it, or where?
No, just go to the vote if we need to vote, and let's move on.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay. Could I see a show of hands, please, for Councillor Packham? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can. So that's 10 of 11. For Councillor Robinson? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For Councillor Robinson. And for Councillor Mepham? 3, 4, 6. That's 7 out of 11. So, based on that vote, Councillors Packham and Mepham will be the 2 alternates. Thank you very much, councillors. The next item on the agenda is the Integrated Planning and Reporting Delivery Program. So, this report provides council and the community with an update as to the progress of the delivery of the council's operational plan and delivery program. The details of this are on page 9 of the agenda. Council are asked to note this report. Could I have a mover for something that's on the screen? Councillor Robinson. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Witters. Councillor Robinson, would you like to speak to that?
Just briefly, I think it's very, very good to see these initiatives, which are part of our commitment for transparency and accountability. And I'm really looking forward to an even better version the next time round, with the abbreviations defined at the top of the document so that people have a better chance of reading it and understanding it. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Any other speakers to this motion? All right, let's go to a vote. So council being asked to note the report. So let's put it to a vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Which brings us to item 8.3, the Community Engagement Strategy, which is page 11. I have Councillor Witters to to move it, Councillor Robinson to second it. Councillor Witters, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I've got in my notes we're on 8.3, yeah. Thank the community for their public submissions in that. So otherwise, anyone else can speak. I've had enough.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, I just want to support this, and I particularly would like to draw the public's attention to the really excellent submissions that are found in the attachments. In particular, Annette Kalar has written a really detailed submission, which I think is worth everybody reading. It draws attention to the fact that council has, in a previous council, actually undertaken to include. I hope I'm on the right item. To include, am I? Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Climate change considerations in all aspects of engagement. And if I might be so bold as to say that this is a glaring omission in our rail trail consultations to date, but I'll just leave that for now. Recommend going to page 100 and those pages are rounded in the attachments on this item 8.3 to the general public. Have a read. It's just a really, really worthwhile set of submissions, and I thank those members of the public with considerable expertise in that area, and note that community engagement should include climate change considerations.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Any other speakers?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that, again, I mean, this is a really good strategy, and it's really useful to have all these things written down on paper, because community engagement is an essential part of the work of all councils. And I really commend this strategy as a commitment to do what is required. And I also note in particular the two top areas of focus shown on page 12 of the strategy are to increase digital capability and further develop the Your Say Armadale online community engagement hub, to improve the online self-service capability, including forms and information accessibility. And I really, really look forward to councillors being consulted in the near future on how ARC plans to address these issues. This will be a really important thing to do, and I really hope this engagement strategy lives up to its promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. If there are no other councillors that wish to speak, let's move to a vote. All those in favour of noting this report? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we will now move to item 8.4, which is the Council Actions Report. This report summarises the actions taken on resolutions of Council. Council, again, is asked just to note this report. So Councillor Witters is moving it, Councillor Galletley is seconding it. Councillor Witters, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just quickly, because I think I mentioned this either in a meeting previously or to the General Manager. I think this is a great idea. It's very much appreciated. Having sat in a lot of different meetings, you get a lot of talk but not a lot of action. So to actually see some action come out of the council meetings and that the community can see the actions, exactly what is said here then is being actioned by the staff. I think it's really good transparency and a good way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Anyone else? Thank you. All right, councillors, let's move to a vote. All those in favour? That's again carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Brings us to item 8.5, public exhibition of civic and ceremonial function and representation. Again, council is being asked to endorse a civic and ceremonial functions and representations policy and place it on display for 28 days. Could I have a mover from Councillor Gadders? Do you move what's on the screen? Thank you. The seconder, thank you, Councillor Redwood. Councillor Gadders, would you like to speak? No. Any other councillors? Let's move to a vote on that. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. We now move back into the nines section, the growth, prosperity and economic development, and go to item 9.2. So just if I can just give a bit of preamble on this, our tourism and events team have worked very hard to lift community spirit. Significant planning has gone into making 2022 a landmark year, particularly given the COVID-impacted calendar for the past 2 years. So they have some fantastic events, which can be a catalyst for reinvigorating the CBD and mall. So for more detail, that's on page 26. There is a recommendation on the screen. Can I have a mover around that? Councillor Redwood. You can actually, yes, you may.
All right. So to part B, could we make the recommendation to retain the name Armadale Autumn Festival?
We might break this. Thank you, Councillor Redwood. We might do this in two pieces. So we'll break that up. We'll vote on the amendment there to retain the name. Sorry, if we have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I suggest it's pretty self-explanatory, but does anyone need to speak to this? We're on the amendment here.
Oh, I think that the festival, the name festival, still, is representative of what we want to do, and even in its changing form. And so I believe that retaining that name, that branding, is important, and would recommend.
Okay, thank you. So we're really voting to replace the B that is up there with the B proposed by Councillor Redwood. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So that now becomes, the amendment now becomes the A, to hold it in the Beatty Street Mall to assist with CBD activation, and Councillor Redwood's amendment. Can I have a mover for the, thank you, Councillor Robinson, and seconded by Councillor Witters? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just speak briefly, if I may.
Yes.
Which is, yes, I'm very happy that we are retaining the Autumn Festival name as in this amendment.
Councillor Robinson, can I ask you to speak more into your...
Sorry, I'll take the mic.
Thank you.
I'm really happy that we're retaining the name Autumn Festival, and also, given our community engagement policy, this is a great idea for this year because we don't have really much time. But I really hope for next year that we investigate the willingness to participate in parades in future, and possibly investigate the desired routes, because the parades were also a nice feature of the festival. So perhaps if we consult the community prior to the 2023 festival, we'll have lots of willing participants. But this is a great idea for this time, so I'm happy to move it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Witters?
Yep. I like the idea of this. What it is now is council's taking the first step. The community has to take the next step and support whatever it's called and whatever it is. The community's got to get out there and show its face and show its enthusiasm for these sorts of events. If you want these sorts of events on to liven the place up, you've got to get out there and support it. So if you're watching it on TV, or if you're reading the newspaper or whatever, get out and support this event and like-minded events when they come along.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. All right, if there are no more comments, let's move to take a vote on item 9.2. What's on the screen there? All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Which takes us to item 9.3, the second quarter budget review. This is a rolling update of the 2021 budget, which is showing an operating surplus of $3.1 million on a consolidated basis and an unrestricted cash forecast of $3.5 million. Council are asked to note the second quarter budget review. Can I have a mover for it? We have something on the screen there, but can I have a mover, Councillor O'Connor, and a seconder, Councillor Gadders? Thank you. Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to this?
I don't want to speak much other than to say that although the unrestricted cash forecast, and it is only a forecast, still sets us with a pretty low, in fact, I think it's the minimum level for unrestricted cash according to the Office for Local Government. Nevertheless, that forecast is there as a pass, and that's good news for the community. And the operating surplus projection all hope is of 3.1 million is a definite improvement, and well done.
Thank you very, very much. Councillor Packham, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just a little concerned here that we're being asked whether we're being, or maybe it's a question to the General Manager, whether we're really being asked to note the second quarter budget review, or are we asked to endorse a change to the underlying budget? The documents here talk about, sorry, if I'm just trying to get a revised budget 21-22. Are we endorsing a change to the budget, or are we just noting that the GM is changing the budget?
Thank you, Councillor Packham. I will have to throw that to the GM.
Can I say that as a mover, as read, I don't endorse it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think item D in the recommendation there that's up on the screen encapsulates that. Essentially, what you'll be adopting is the amendments within the quarterly review.
Any other councillors to speak for this? To this? Okay. If there's no one else to speak, let's move to a vote. The council note what is on the screen. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Councillors, this brings us to item 9.4 on the agenda, which is details of which are at page 45 in the agenda. Council is being asked to approve new borrowings in accordance with the 21-22 operational plan and budget. These borrowings are in relation to the Generic Dam wall upgrade and the Puddle Dock Dam raw water transfer system. We have a recommendation on the screen, but if I'm seeking a mover, Councillor Gadders.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to suggest an amendment to this, please.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest 3 particular points to go into this. Just to help us forward, I had actually provided those 3 points earlier, so if we could bring those to screen, that'd be great. Overall here, we're being asked to fund a large sum of money on the premise that in 2026 the water fund is going to be dry, so to speak. And, I guess I'm against funding that at this particular time under that current motion. We don't really need to be servicing a loan at this point in time. So what I'd suggest is on the screen there that the funding contribution is sourced from the water fund rather than from borrowings. That council receive a more detailed briefing in relation to the options for the water main at Puddle Dock, the upgrade there, and also as part of the information provided to us, we saw a number of loans already with the council, and I'd like to see us look at how we might potentially refinance those, as they're sitting on some very high interest rates for some very long terms.
Thank you, Councillor Gadders. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Gadders? Councillor Robinson, thank you very much. Councillor Gadders, I assume you have spoken sufficiently. Would any other councillors like to speak to the amendment that is up there?
I do apologise if I've missed something from missing Monday's pre-briefing meeting. Question to the GM. 2 questions, I think. What's the time frame? Is this loan looking to be taken out to meet a certain time frame to have these things fixed and done and everything else? And was the option of taking from the water fund originally looked at and not done? Or is that water fund being held back for other needs? Does it make sense, the question? So if the money out of the water fund, is it being not used already? So it's being held back to maybe do something else, and that's why you've had to borrow funds. And if I've missed something on Monday, I do apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Mr. GM, if you'd care to answer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I might just throw to Mr. Manners to answer that, but just a point of clarification. Item A and B, and is it C, D and E as the additional one? So would item A potentially not now be 5770 instead of 9770. So we're saying that we'll borrow for Puddle Dock. We won't borrow for Generic Dam, which was the 4. Or
All the way around.
Let's put the brakes on this 9.7 spend until we get some clarification based on those 3 points.
Thank you. Now I'll just throw to Mr. Manners. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manners.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Councillor, the reason that we want to take out loans is to actually maintain a level of contingency within our water fund. And the level at which we deem a necessary level is about $5 million. I may stand corrected on that. The reason we do that is the infrastructure and problems that we seem to face with that infrastructure is quite expensive. In the event that you need to sink, say, a field of bores or repair or replace a pipeline or a pump station, generally these items are very expensive, and the urgency in which we try and deal with them incurs a high cost on top of the general cost you would normally expect. In terms of a long-term financial plan, it's best practice to actually maintain a level of contingency, and we can provide you further details and take that as a question on notice if you're happy.
I've just got to follow up to that through the Mayor to Mr. Manners. So if the money is taken out of the water fund to fund, as is written in the amendment, and say the waste treatment plant goes down, or we go through another bad drought, then we'll have to borrow money anyway to then cover what would be that reserve that would have been in the water fund to do those things? Is or no?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. The answer is, to clarify there, you were talking about challenges in the waste system. Now, there's 2 different funds, the water and the water and sewer, and both funds operate the same way. So yes, if we ended up facing a challenge which required incurred a financial burden we couldn't afford, then at that time we would also be applying for funding by loan or by grant or other.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry, I'd just like to add an E, which would modify the amendments proposed by Councillor Gaddies, and that would be that.
Before we do, I think that might just be a foreshadowed motion if this one's lost.
Okay, I rely on you, but I think it's pretty convenient to put it together if there's no objection from the mover.
Okay.
And that's simply that any briefing includes long-term outlook for improving revenue in the water fund or not, because I see the reason for that is that treated water sales used to be really a major source of revenue in this local government area, and since 2019, when people, there was an enormous amount of pressure on the demand side to reduce that, we have seen a loss of revenue from the sales of treated water, and my concern is that in good times we could actually make some more money there. And I would really like that to be brought up to the new council for some discussion with staff. And that's why I was going to just propose with Councillor Gaddies and his seconder's agreement that just be added as something that might be included in a report back to us.
Thank you, Councillor Gaddies. Councillor McMichael, your microphone's on. Could you just kill that? So Councillor,
won't be long. I was just going to say I'm okay with that addition.
I am too.
Should that be a separate item? Yeah, I think that should be a D.
Mr Mayor, could we just have that repeated again from the start from Councillor O'Connor?
So, Councillor O'Connor, could you just speak to item D then, just so that what appears on screen matches what you were saying?
I just have that 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 the briefings include. Thank you. Long term, because I can't see that actually.
So it currently reads, the briefings include long-term outlook in improving revenue in the water fund.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Councillors, are there anyone else would like to speak to what is on the screen up there? Councillor McMichael?
I thought that one of the major reasons for borrowing the large amount of money was that T-Corp, God bless it, T-Corp had low rates and interest rates were low at the moment, and that was useful, and that was why we want to do it all now. But I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McMichael. Councillor Packham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question of the GM, and it refers back to the revised budget of item 9.3, and the question is whether that revised budget was predicated on the success of receiving, success of being authorised to take loans in 9.4. I noticed that the budget review did not talk to councillors about debt to equity ratios or current ratios and the ability to fund these items, noting that a significant amount of that work in the Dimmock Dam wall has already been incurred, which leads me to believe that the funds were taken from unrestricted general funds. And we've also, in the closed session of the January Ordinary Council meeting, endorsed a variation of purchase order for another significant amount of 1.4 million. So, on question, was the revised budget predicated on success of this item 9.3?
Thank you, Councillor Packham. Mr General Manager.
Mr Mayor, I may need to refer to Mr Manners or Ms Stidworthy in the event that Mr Manners may not be able to respond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is yes, that we did our estimations for, our Q3 budget adjustments have been based on the application and the successful application of a loan for these works. Does that satisfactorily answer your question?
So, sorry, the question was back to Councillor Packham. Does that satisfactorily answer the question?
If the General Manager for Mayor or Mr Manners could highlight where in the revised budget that impact is. So I'm trying to say, can you please identify where in the revised budget the successful ability to borrow more funds is impacting there? Is that possible or not? I mean, we're talking about borrowing for the water fund. Is there anything in the revised budget in item 9.3 related to the water fund?
Yep, Mr Manners.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the bottom line for the water fund actually represents a reserve figure, and the reserve figure is, it does reflect application for that loan. So that final figure is protected by the application of that loan. Without taking out, if we do not take out a loan, then the reserve figure will have to be revised.
Okay, so has that just prejudiced our vote to endorse a budget in 9.3?
So, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Gatters.
Yeah, just obviously adding to cause and effect here. If we've got a budget that we were adopting that went up to the end of the last quarter, and it already had this number rolled in, which hasn't been adopted, obviously we have a concern there. Just going back to what we're talking about in terms of water reserves here, you know, in terms of the information we're given in the business paper on page 46, we currently seem to be sitting at about $23 million in that water reserve, dipping down next year to 15 million, which is still well above our $5 to $6 million baseline. So I believe putting the brakes on this particular 9.4 item in terms of additional loans for a slight period of time, we're not talking a year, we're talking you know, how much time it takes to revise those reports and probably present it at the next ordinary council meeting, then we can move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Gadders. I might ask Kelly Stidworthy to pop up and just make a few comments for the benefit of all of us, and whether it'll impact this second quarter review or whether that will roll across to the third quarter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Hi, Council. Just to provide some clarification, the 21-22 original budget that was adopted by the previous council incorporated the proposed borrowings of $9.77 million in the water fund. So they are currently within the quarterly review results because we obviously haven't had any alternative decision around that in relation to not taking out the loan. So we did adopt the IPNR suite of documents for this financial year, incorporating the assumption that we would take out borrowings within the water fund. Just to clarify as well, in relation to the programs within council, everything's divided up into the water, sewerage and general funds, so including the capital program. So where we have drawn down and spent money on a water fund capital project, the funds related to that project are technically coming out of the water reserve until such time as we replenish that reserve through borrowings, or if we're not borrowing, obviously the reserve wears those costs. So within the projections within the quarterly budget review, those reserve values will reflect anything related to the function of that particular reserve. So water capital come out of the water reserve, sewer capital come out of the sewer reserve, and then all other capital will be reflected within general fund. There is a couple of other things we've looked at today just in relation to this item, and there will be a significant drawdown on the reserve over the next few years. So what this relates to is basically we prepare long-term capital plans for the water and sewage funds. What they're indicating is that the water treatment plants and pumping stations will need renewals and upgrades over the next few years over and above what has historically been the case. We also need to construct some new reserves to increase the capacity of the water network. And we need to do some works on our dam infrastructure, obviously, as we hold those assets. But that's not incorporating dam walls, so we are facing some significant costs in relation to the capital projections that will be coming out of water fund. And that's unlikely to change very much. We will have some ability to look at project deferrals and so forth through the budget review process, but the reality is we have an ageing water and sewage infrastructure network, and we do require funding over and above what we currently have provided for within the reserve for that purpose. But we're happy to obviously undertake to obtain additional information and bring that back as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Ms Stedworthy. So, based on the information we have received, do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion?
I've got a question for the councillors and maybe the mover of this amendment. Based on the information provided in the reports, information provided by the financial officer and by Mr Manners, would it be worthy to defer this motion for a month to get more clarification on around it to make a better decision? So yeah, would it be worthy to put in a deferral motion for a month and get a workshop or a meeting with more clarification for answers and questions based on what Councillor Packham said and your concerns and everything else?
I'll go back to Councillor Gadders as it's his.
Thank you. Look, I believe primarily that's exactly what we're doing here, rather than just calling it a deferral motion, but these 4 points are clarifying exactly what we'd like to get worked on in that interim period.
Okay. Just another question.
Thank you. You can respond to.
Oh, just another question for the thing. How do I put this? Based on, because I'm trying to find a reason to support this amendment. So based on the comments that we've said here today, if we borrow money to do this, are we just moving our rubbish from one corner to another? Like basically, say we're going to have to borrow the money to do what we want to do in there. But if another issue comes up, that the money that we're using in these amendments, if an issue comes up, then we're going to have to borrow money anyway.
So based on the information we've been provided in the business paper, as I said, we're currently sitting at about $23 million with a necessary floor reserve of 5 to 6 million. So we've got coverage for this year. This particular motion, by taking care of these 4 points, let's say at worst case, we're 2 months down the track. So we're still within a window to work through with this financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Gadders.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to, because I am looking for reasons, but based on what Ms. Didworthy has said, and maybe she can give me clarification here, because finances aren't my strongest point. That money that we've got sitting there is to cover a lot of other different aspects, like, as you said, like with waste treatment plants and all that sort of stuff. So the 23 mil, was it 23, did you say? Yeah, so that 23 million sitting there, has that already been, maybe I missed it, and I really do apologise if I have, has that already been sort of designated on where and what its proposals to be used for? That's why if we touch that, then it's going to be, as I said, just changing where you're getting your issues from. So I'm trying to find out why we have to dip into the water fund if it's already been designated for a service later on, just in case, and that's why the council has proposed going for a loan, or whether, as Councillor Gadders has said, there's money sitting there, so why can't we use it? So maybe that's a question to the GM or to the finances. I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. My concern is that we will chew up all the time in the chamber to try and seek answers for that. A handful of councillors I know have looked into this. My reading of what is on the screen there buys us time. It doesn't close doors. So it buys us time to review, councillors to have more information than the couple of days that we've had with the business papers, and we can come back and revisit. So based on that, are there any more questions from the councillors? Okay, I'd like to put that to a vote. The 4 points that are up there on the screen, all those in favour? Thank you. That's 10 for and 1. Sorry, let's try this again. I'll need a more. We're not at a cattle auction here where you don't want people to see your hand. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. That is 10 votes for. Those against, 1 vote. Thank you very much. I declare that motion passed. Thank you, councillors. These are important things that we do need to spend time on, and I thank thank our audience for indulging us in that. Which brings us to item 9.5. Item 9.5 provides an overview of cash and investments for the month to 31 January. The details of this are on page 51 of our agenda. Council is being asked to note the report and the updated end-of-year forecasts. Can I have a mover for... we have a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a mover for what's there? Councillor Galletley. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Galletley, would you like to speak to this? Thank you. Any other councillors would you like to speak? Thank you. Let's move this to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Which now brings us to the 10 series. The item up for discussion now is the Armadale Regional Local Environmental Plan. Just as a bit of a preamble here, this item, which is page 57, or begins at page 57 on the agenda and continues for quite a while, getting our local environmental plan correct is going to be integral to the growth of our region, as it brings the pre-amalgamated planning documents of Guyra and Armadale together. So this has been no small task, and the planning team deserves high praise for their diligence and willingness to find sensible solutions within the rules. Council is being asked to endorse and the updates to the Armadale Regional Local Environmental Plan with respect to a number of challenges that have arisen with that amalgamation. So could I seek someone to move a recommendation?
Could I just put...
Would you like to move it? And then
I would like to put an amendment in here, please.
Okay, certainly.
If that's all right. It just it is a colossal job, and there's certain things that can be bypassed. But there was one that came up a little bit late, talking to one of the owners of the 502 Generic Dam Road, and so thank you for putting the amendment up. And if you can read that, please, Mr. Mayor, that'd be great. And if there's any comments where this could slow things down or whatever for the whole procedure, I would love Mr. Boyce to fill me in with it. But that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galatly. I'll read the item C that you have put up there, and if that's acceptable to you, you can then move items A, B, and C together. So, item C that's been put up is note the submission from the owners of lot DP 597896, being 502 Generic Dam Road, and commit to revisiting this matter as part of the first review of the Armadale Regional Local Environmental Plan. So, if what I've just read out is consistent with what you think,
that's correct. That's what I'm putting up, and as I said, I'd just like to if there needs to be comment for if it's not convenient to do it, or there's anything wrong with it, I would like Mr. Boyce just to voice his opinion so that I know that I'm happy with it.
Thank you, Councillor Galatly. Mr. Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Councillor Galatly, I don't see any issue with the amendment slowing down the process of merging the LEP, and we're certainly not committing to any outcome as I can see it. Purely just revisiting the matter as part of our first review, so I don't see any issues there.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Councillor Galatly, having heard that advice, are you comfortable to now move items A, B, and C?
I'm comfortable moving this. I've just got some of the councillors are looking towards me, wondering why I want to move that. It's been a long-term thing. It's been worded a little bit differently from the merger of Generic Council with us, and then coming through this next process. It's just a little bit of a dark area we don't know about as far as grazing rights and stuff like that goes for this particular one. But I just getting a little bit of time to fill a few more holes in about. That's pretty well all that I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Galatly has moved that. Do I have a seconder for what's on the screen? Thank you, Councillor Redwood. Would any councillors like to speak to the motion that's on the screen? Councillor Redwood.
Just think I'm very glad that we've got to this point, and as we said, it's been no mean feat to amalgamate these two documents, and I think it heralds the beginning of a new wave or an era in our planning and development in the region. So I think it's a great thing.
Thank you, Councillor Redwood. All right, councillors, if there are no other comments to be made, let's move to a vote on this. All those in favour? Thank you. That's passed unanimously, which brings us to item 10.2, the Local Strategic Planning Statement Status Report. So council here is being asked to note the report and the updated end-of-year forecasts. Can I call for a mover? Councillor O'Connor.
Happy to move, thanks.
And a seconder, Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to that?
No, I don't want to speak to it, just to say that the sooner we get on with updating the LSPS, the better. For the same reasons adumbrated by Councillor Redwood. We need to move into that new era quick.
Terrific, thank you. Any other councillors?
I'd just like to when we had our pre-meeting briefing, Mr. Boyce made some very useful comments, and maybe he would like to repeat them at this meeting if it's possible.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Mr. Boyce, I'm assuming you can recall your useful comments.
I don't think I'm suffering from memory loss, but I think, Councillor, you're referring to the housing strategy discussion. Happy for you to jump in here, but I think we discussed the fact that the housing strategy is listed for action somewhere between 2024 and 2026. And certainly my reading of the discussion in the Mayor's Summit last week was that it's the wish of this council that we move much more quickly on that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Councillors, any other comments? All right, let's move to a vote then. All those in favour, please. Thank you. Passed unanimously. Which brings us now to item 11.1, around the transfer of remaining funds from the library deductible gift. So council is being asked to approve the transfer of monies to enable the purchase of a compactus shelving unit. Details of this are on page 101 of the agenda. Can I call for a mover, please? Councillor O'Connor, a seconder. Councillor McMichael, thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
No, just this is a transfer from a bequest, a generous bequest from a member of the community. So we're just very grateful, and this is an excellent use of those funds, and we're grateful to the family for their agreement.
Thank you. I endorse that. Any other comments? Let's move to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Item 11.2, public exhibition of the community grants and sponsorship policy. Council is being asked to endorse the community grants and sponsorship policy for public exhibition for a period of 28 days. Details of that are on page 104. We have a recommendation up there on the screen. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Witters. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Would anyone like to speak to that? Thank you. Let's move that to a vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. I will grant you leave, Councillor McMichael.
Sorry, got to be quick around here.
You sure do.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that wanted to make sure that community groups were notified about the plan, and the amount of money was specified and how much money was available to them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor McMichael. Any other comments before I move quickly to a vote? All right. Let's vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Which brings me now to item 11.3. This is something we've had a fair bit of discussion around. These are the key pillar working groups. So these are seen as an alternative to the former council committees. Details of the proposed key pillar working groups begin on page 108 of the agenda. The aim of this new approach is to be more targeted in what is addressed, with a focus on achieving defined outcomes from a relatively short yet achievable time frame. I'm going to split. We have a recommendation up on the screen. I suggest that we split this into two parts, with points A, B, C and E to be considered first, and then the second part, which refers to the nominations for the statutory and other committees, to be considered second. So can I have a mover for A, B, C and E? Councillor Robinson.
I wanted to move a slightly amended version, which is down at the bottom of the screen there. Can I move it with just those words incorporated into the basic motion?
Yes, yeah. You can. So we'll wait for the magic to happen on the screen. Thank you. Now, Councillor Robinson is what is on the screen? Is that
Yes,
what you wish to move? Thank
yes,
you.
that's right. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Robinson, would you like to speak to? Councillor O'Connor, you'll need to kill your. Thank you.
I'm just concerned because it's no secret there's been some discussions, and I'm just wondering whether the amendment put forward by Councillor Robinson means to talk about additional working groups or additional key pillars, such as health and community wellbeing. Because health and wellbeing is a little bit big for one of these short and snappy 3-month working groups, I think.
So, Councillor O'Connor, if I can try and paraphrase or summarise, if there were an additional pillar, then that would. Sorry.
That I think would better embody some discussions that were had beforehand.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Based on that, would you like to, Councillor Packham?
Councillor O'Connor's amendment.
Thank you. So if we are changing that to an additional pillar.
KPWG.
I wonder if, and Councillor Robinson, maybe if you could just indulge me, I wonder if we take the specific out of that and just ensure flexibility to add additional pillars as necessary.
Mr. Mayor, I would support that amendment. That amendment of the amendment.
Amen. Okay, so if we can wait for the screen to catch up. Sorry, we are having a tech issue. When I say we, I don't include me in that. So just chat amongst yourselves for a moment and we'll come back to you. Okay, councillors, if we could resume, please. The tech is so we need to adjust. Do you need me to read it out? So up the top, and ensure sufficient flexibility to add additional pillars as required. That's it. Take it. Okay. Okay, thank you. With the tech back on, Councillor Robinson. Sorry, Mel, can you just get the formatting bit out? Thank you. Councillor Robinson, can you confirm that that is acceptable to you as an amendment?
Moment, you've got groups in there which wouldn't be required.
Now the magic has caught up.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy.
Thank you very much. Now do we have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Would any councillors like to speak to what is proposed there? And so Councillor Robinson has moved A, B, C and E as they appear on the screen. Councillor O'Connor, it looks like you would like to speak.
I just want to say something very brief for the benefit of the community. This is a new approach to doing committee work and getting sort of short, sharp outcomes, which I think is a great idea. I have some reservations, but I'm happy to, in relation to the democratic nature of the process by which people find themselves on working groups, but I'll reserve my opinion because I think this is going to be, if done in a very respectful way, which I think it will be, it has the possibility of being a really excellent change. So that's why I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Packham.
Mr. Mayor, I also applaud the initiative to take a new approach to solving some of our particular issues in our region. I am concerned about the use of the word sufficient. Flexibility, we either have flexibility or we don't have flexibility, and I would like to see sufficient, as it is not adequately defined, struck and as it's not needed, to add emphasis to the amended motion.
Thank you. That is, I'll take that as a comment. We are now amending. Okay, councillors, can I suggest we go to a vote? All those in favour for what's on the board?
With great respect, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Packham's actually made a really sensible suggestion. I always like fewer rather than more words, and I think he's correct. So I would support his amendment.
So we now need to vote on Councillor Robinson's, or unless Councillor Robinson is happy to make an amendment. Councillor O'Connor?
She's happy.
Sorry. So, okay, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Robinson is happy. That has always been my aim.
We can now ditch sufficient.
Already ditched. Okay, so Councillor Robinson, Councillor O'Connor, you seconded this. You're happy? Enough?
I am now.
Terrific. Councillors, let's move to a vote on this, please. All those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. I look forward to a new era of how we can work together. And I might just say, if you can indulge me, this is going to be a great thing, particularly for us new councillors who haven't had a forum really to sink our teeth into anything. So this is the start of that. The former or the returning councillors, if I can call you that, you know what to get your teeth into. But I can say for us new councillors, this is going to be a great thing. We can now be far more proactive in contributing to the region. I'll now move to 12.1, the ARIC meeting minutes. So, oh, sorry, thank you very much. This might take a little longer. So item D, we have the statutory committees. I would like to call for nominations to those committees. There are some councillors already assigned. If anyone would like to propose themselves or remove themselves, please do so. So the first one we'll do is the Local Area Traffic Committee, and Councillor McMichael is nominally on that.
And I was wondering if Councillor Widders would like to accept the nomination, then I'll nominate Councillor Widders.
How many? Okay. I should note, councillors, we can have a handful of councillors on that traffic committee.
As much as I'd like to go on that, my issues with the North Hill lights might deter people from joining that committee, so I'm going to decline that nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Widders. Are there any other nominees for the traffic committee?
Don't stop yourselves.
Councillor McMichael, I should check before we vote on this. Are you happy to be on the traffic committee?
I'm very happy.
Thank you. All right, let's vote on that. All in favour of Councillor McMichael being on the traffic committee, please. That's 1, 2, 3. We got there in the end. Thank you. That's unanimous. That would have been awkward. We now have the New England Weeds Authority. We have on the screen there are 3 councillors on there. Would anyone else like to nominate for that? And we will have votes.
Can I nominate Councillor Robinson, please?
You certainly can. So now the New England Weeds Authority has 3 councillors on it. So we have Councillor Robinson. The other 3 councillors that are nominally up there, Councillor O'Connor, Packham, Councillors O'Connor, Packham and Galletley. Are you happy to still be on there?
Yeah, I'm pretty keen, actually.
Thank you.
I'm also happy to be there.
I'm accepting the nomination.
Okay, so we now have 4 into 3. Are there any other nominations? Okay, let's. Well, sorry. What we will do is we'll do it in order. So we'll do it Councillors O'Connor, then Packham, then Galletley, then Robinson, and whoever has the most votes. So you can actually vote for all 3 if we have a dead heat. Anyway, trust me, this will work. I have faith in you. All those in favour of Councillor O'Connor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. So all those in favour of Councillor Packham, please raise your hand. That is 10. All those in favour of Councillor Galletley, please raise your hand. That is 1, 3, 6. All those in favour of Councillor Robinson. 2, 3, 4, 6. Pardon?
I'm happy to stand down.
Thank you, Councillor Galletley.
That is my pleasure.
So, based on this, our nominees for the New England Weeds Authorities will be Councillors O'Connor, Packham and Robinson. Thank you, councillors. We now come to the Armadale Regional Sports Council. We have Councillor Galletley's name up there. Are there any other nominations for the Sports Council?
I just want to support Councillor Galletley. He's great on that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Galletley, we won't vote just in case, but you might like to make a statement.
No, I'll accept it. I'm fairly familiar with it, but thank you for the nominations, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Galletley. The next one is the local Bushfire Committee, and Councillor Mepham, we have actually spoken with him about that, and he has agreed to be on it. Are there any other councillors that would like to nominate in his place or feel they have a stronger case? Thank you. Well, I'll declare Councillor Mepham our Bushfire Committee representative. The next one is the General Manager's Performance Review Committee, and it's proposed the Mayor, the Deputy and Councillor O'Brien be the nominated ones by Council, and then we have the General Manager gets to nominate one at his election close to the time. So would anyone like to try and knock out the Mayor, the Deputy or Councillor O'Brien?
Don't think anyone's game.
Thank you. Sorry, we are descending into farce. Could I have a vote on what is on the screen there, please? Thank you. We'll make that pass unanimously as well. Thank you, councillors. Good to move. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 12.1, the ARIC meeting minutes. Council is asked to note the minutes of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee held on 14 September and 16 November. We have a recommendation on the screen. Would anyone care to move that? Thank you, Councillor Packham, and seconded. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Packham, do you wish to speak to that? Thank you. Let's move to a vote on that. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. And for item 12.2, the Traffic Advisory Committee minutes. So council is asked to endorse the agenda and minutes of the Traffic Advisory Committee. Details on page 116 of the agenda. Can I call for a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Robinson, as seconder. Thank you, Councillor Redwood. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Well, councillors, it actually does give me great pleasure to end the open session of the meeting. Thank you very much. That has been very robust. There is something that isn't on the agenda that we need to acknowledge. Happy birthday to Councillor Deborah O'Brien and Councillor Susan McMichael. So, because all microphones can't be on at once, we won't sing. We might do that tonight. Mine is on, so we definitely won't. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to the members of the public who came along for this meeting. We really enjoy having you here. We'll ask you to leave before we get into our closed session. Thank you. Let's have 2 minutes, councillors. a great day. We had a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. I think that was really worthwhile for all of us and also for the public that were watching and listening. So let's go and have a bite to eat and drink if you're so able. Oh, because it's happy birthday. The birthday girls will lead us. So we're at the railway whenever we get there. Do you give a summary of what happened in closed?
Yeah, you give a summary of what happened in closed council. We haven't been. I've done it in previous cases, but it hasn't been a hallmark of this.